Miss Marvel producer Sana Amanat is calling for people to, quote, complain to Kevin Feige to try and get a second season of Miss Marvel greenlit for Disney Plus, despite it being the worst performing Disney Plus show for Marvel Studios. Let's get into this. We're going to go over how poorly this show did perform. From what we can gather, Samba TV reported only 775,000 households tuned in to watch the series in its first 5 days on Disney Plus. Right there. That is worse than every single show that had debuted before it. In fact, it's only a little over half of what Hawkeye did. So Hawkeye was the previous worst performing series on Disney Plus for Marvel Studios with 1.5 million households tuning in. You had WandaVision at 1.6 million, Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Moon Knight both at 1.8 million, and then Loki at 2.5 million. And then if you want to look at stuff that came out after Miss Marvel debuted, you had She-Hulk at 1.5 million, and that was just in its first 4 days, so it might be a little bit higher if you calculate the fifth day there. And then Secret Invasion over its first 5 days only did 994,000. Still beat Miss Marvel, but has now since become the second worst performing Disney Plus Marvel Studios production. So there you kind of get the history of that. This was a pretty poor performing show compared to all the other Marvel Studios productions for Disney Plus. And then this is the report that we have that Sana Amanat was telling people to complain about the show to try and get a greenlit. This comes from laughingplace.com over on Twitter. They were at, I guess, one of Marvel Comics' panels talking about Miss Marvel, where Sana Amanat was. And she said, "It's great to see more demand. Complain. I'm happy to have you guys complain to Kevin Feige for more. Kevin, let's get a season 2. So she's trying to encourage people to start some kind of fan campaign to try and get a season 2. I don't know if that's going to happen because you have user reviews at a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb. That's pretty middling. I'm sure people will say, oh, it was review bomb, but there's still more 10 out of 10 reviews than there are 1 out of 10. Looks like almost 1,000 more. So yeah, I think you'll probably take those out and you still probably end up around with a 6.3. What is interesting, though, is that she's now asking people to complain to Kevin Feige to get a second season when she previously took issue with people that were criticizing the show. She told NBC Asian America, "I think it comes from a place of anger in a sense that their identities are being threatened. If they can't connect with it, then that's okay. I just wish they wouldn't try to put it down." So she was trying to say that people who were criticizing the show were saying that their identities are being threatened. What a crock of crap. And then as for whether it's probably going to get a second series, who knows? I'm not Kevin Feige, but he did reveal back in February to Entertainment Weekly that he plans on cutting back the number of shows the studio plans to produce. This is what he said. He said, "We want Marvel Studios and the MCU projects to really stand out and stand above, so people will see that as we get further into Phase 5 and 6, the pace at which we're putting out the Disney Plus shows will change so they can each get a chance to shine." When asked if he would be spacing them out or putting out fewer shows per year, he said both, I think. And then later in the interview, he said, "I think when we are doing about 8 projects a year, and again, I said this is going to shift a little bit, they all have to be different. They all have to stand apart and stand alone and be different from one another." So I would say the chances of Miss Marvel getting a second season are slim, given the fact that you are having these huge budget cuts coming from the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios, where they're just not able to make enough money on some of these shows. I mean, you had Bob Iger even out there saying that there's lots of shows out there that weren't bringing in any new subscribers. They're taking a $1.8 billion write-off, basically, because they have shows that they created, such as Willow from Lucasfilm, that they had out for less than 6 months that they are removing from the platform because they see that as as a show that's not worth anything anymore, or at least is significantly less than what they actually spent on it. So I don't think things are looking well for a second season of Miss Marvel. Maybe the Marvel's box office might be something different. Who knows? With the box office now, it does look like there might be something with that. You did have Barbie bringing in, I think, over $300 million globally in its opening weekend. But we'll see if that is the case with the Marvels. That is obviously a little bit different. Barbie obviously being more focused on females from the very beginning, whereas the Marvel, specifically Captain Marvel, was a male for most of his entire life until they had Carol Danvers take over the role in like 2012, so very recently. So we'll see if that has anything to do with whether that performs well. But I would say that might be an indicator on whether or not they do a second season of this, because everything else looks like you would not do a second season if you're looking at actual like hard cold numbers rather than something like your DEI quotas that you might have to fulfill. So obviously got to factor that into, but we'll see what happens. I don't think that the show is going to get a second season just with all of the cold hard data that we have, the poor performance, the fact that they're cutting back the budget, and now you have Sana Amanat basically trying to AstroTurf a fan campaign to get a second season.